think that throughout this class, I was definitely able to gain a lot more experience in public speaking because it definitely increased my level of confidence when speaking in front of people, and I think that practicing at home has definitely increased my confidence in being able to link different ideas together, and and when they're put in a specific sequence that I'm able to visualize in my mind what I'm supposed to talk about next. And I think as time went on, I was able to link these ideas better and being able to convey my point in a more convincing way. And I think throughout the course, I was able to take the concept of analytical listening because it was most important to me, since that I like to take into account many people's perspectives and being able to assess the qualities of these ideas before judging a person before actually hearing the point that they're trying to make across. And I think when you're trying to speak to people with multiple perspectives, that you definitely want people to do this. And I think that it was most important because you can definitely explain your opposing views more effectively. And I think that practicing nonverbal communication is also important in all areas because it reflects on how people perceive you as you speak. And if you're, using manipulators, and people will definitely think that you're unconfident and not really convinced in the information that you're trying to describe. And I think that as I was able to progress through my speeches, that I was using less manipulators, and I did feel confident in my ability to organize my thoughts a lot more clear. And when I was able to create my introductions, that they were a lot more stronger because I was able to maintain proper eye contact. And I think that Harrison Wright was actually able to display a good level of confidence when it came to presenting his last speech on drinking and driving, because he definitely had a presentation that depicted a fallacy of catastrophic failures. And I think that this was a good technique because it embraced the ability to persuade everyone the true dangers of drinking and driving. And it was important for him to do that because it would strengthen his argument on why it would lead to so many deaths. And it was definitely, the audience was able to be more involved because they were able to feel like they could be affected too, and their families and friends. And I think that throughout my interview speech, I was able to organize my thoughts, and I organized them in a space pattern, which definitely helped describe the two different surf breaks that I had, and shore breaks and reef breaks, and the similarities and differences between them, as well as talking about my mentor's feelings about each spot. And I think that my technique used for getting the attention of the audience was referring something similar to the audience, which was discussing about how rain and the storm or different storms were able to create these ocean waves. And I think that I was able to create an anecdote of Clark Little's background to describe his importance in my interview, which also I think was a strength. And I was able to relate his ideas to the next point that I was going on in my space pattern. Now, I definitely think this was different from my persuasive speech because I used the technique of directness of approach, and I was able to make my purpose clear that texting and driving was far more dangerous than any other action. And I felt that the audience was friendly enough to be influenced by this kind of resemblance effects that could definitely have potential harm on them or their friends and family. And I think that my biggest improvement in my ability to maintain eye contact with the audience and not having to look back at the board or my notes as much as I started I think this was because I was able to learn on how to connect each point together in my persuasive speech, which I think was a technique of Pathos which brought emotional ties to my audience in order to persuade with the Monroe's motivated action sequence pattern. And according to Alden et al., and I feel like my visual aids were able to get less lengthy as time went on because I could relate my points together, but I think it was definitely a big improvement. And I think my instructor was able to describe about my strengths in my strong introductions because I was definitely able to convey my point and set the tone of whether being serious or being firm or informative. And my audience was definitely noted by my ability to cite my sources as well as being able to use quality information and convincing information. And I felt like my projection was definitely maintained throughout my PowerPoints and was definitely interesting to listen to. Now, I think the theme with my speeches were my eye contact and visual aid and lengthy PowerPoints that weren't really favored. And there was definitely sometimes in my first speech or two that I was using fillers such as or like, and I feel like this was definitely something that was needed to be worked on. And I definitely was able to work on this as I practiced at home, and I was able to just go over it a few times before actually the speech. And I think that I used the informative purpose statement to state the objective of my informative speech, which was definitely something that I did a lot. And I think that I could have done better with my informative speech if I was just able to tone down the amount of information, because I felt like I had information anxiety since I did my speech on a general history topic on the attack of Pearl Harbor, which required a lot of history information to remember, as long as with a lot of vocal citations and the reasoning behind each of the government's decisions and all that had being explained accordingly. And I think that this kind of these skills and goals definitely reflect on my ability to increase my desire to become a better speaker, because eventually I want to become an officer in the military, which I think in that career I will definitely have to be able to convey myself clearly, and being able to speak in front of many men is something that is definitely heuristically valued, because you can't do it once or twice and expect it for it to happen all the time and for everyone to understand you clearly, but you actually have to practice. And the more you practice, the more you're able to link ideas and become better at speaking in public. And I think the skills that I was able to learn throughout this class has definitely and gave me a lot of insight in what it requires to become a proper speaker. And I think that with this communication skills, I think I will be able to impact the lives of others in the military and potentially save lives. So